Disclaimer. The views, opinions, and statements expressed in this podcast are for informational, artistic, and entertainment purposes only. They do not necessarily reflect the views of the host, guests, or affiliated organizations. This podcast is not intended to provide legal, medical, or professional advice. While we aim to ensure that the information presented is accurate, we make no representations or warranties about the completeness, reliability, or suitability of the content. Any actions taken based on this content are done at the listener's own risk. The creators and contributors of this podcast disclaim all liability for any loss, damage, or harm resulting from the use or reliance on this content. Furthermore, the podcast may include discussions of sensitive topics which some listeners may find distressing. Listener discretion is advised. All music, content, and creative expressions featured in this podcast are intended to uplift marginalized voices and are protected under free speech and artistic expression rights.
Back with AIPAC Zombies. What, as a refresher, is AIPAC?
It's the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, which is basically a PAC that is spending a lot of money on politicians and everyone else to benefit Israel, but not the American people. What is an AIPAC zombie?
So an AIPAC zombie is somebody who's possessed by this lobbying, the pro-Israel side of the political spectrum. They are there to perform in whatever way they can be helpful to promoting Zionism and genocide in Gaza, apartheid in Palestine, basically anything that will forward the interests of Israel and its, unfortunately, many allies within the U.S.
And that is also related to corporations and big money. It's very, very related and interconnected with AIPAC, which equals an attack on every single right that we have, environmental, gender. It's not just about Palestine, it's about the whole world.
Yes, and speaking of gender, well, actually, first we should introduce ourselves. Speaking of gender, I am Toshio Moronic. I have done journalism for about 15 years. Also host a podcast called Sad Francisco that people can check out. My co-host, Mama Ganoush, has been a frequent guest on Sad Francisco. Who is Mama Ganoush?
I'm Toshio's mother. Mama Ganoush is
relationship.
It's me, a retired Palestinian disabled whore that lives in. I am one of the last standing brown trans people who live in the neighborhood or the Castro in San Francisco. I'm also the co-founder of the Hala Collective that is me and Toshio are part of.
Yes, Hala Collective, heritage artists, and liberation activists. Basically a collective of people who are interested in collective liberation for all and do that through art. Check it out online. We'll put information for that in the show notes. We have somebody who has quickly become, a figure in national news, even international news, because this is somebody who is the first trans person in U.S. Congress.
Oh, we talk about, okay, like out trans person, I would say.
Yes, yes.
Sarah?
Sarah McBride.
McBride.
Yes, correct.
Cool,
Yeah, so Sarah McBride is a very good example of, when I said gender and kept saying gender earlier, I meant to say Sarah McBride is a good example of something that the Israeli lobby has done very, to great effect, unfortunately, which is like pinkwashing. And what would you describe pinkwashing for people?
Yeah, pinkwashing is a way to promote Israel as an LGBTQ plus like progressive state in order to undermine that they are actually not, and also to water down what they're doing in terms of the colonization of Palestine, the killing of Palestinian, Syrian, and Lebanese people, and the aiding of the killing of Armenians and other people through like weapon trade and basically every single evil that you think about on earth is really somehow connected to Israel at some point. Yes. And pinkwashing is a way to sort of promote it differently or brand it differently. So it's a branding campaign that started over 19 years ago as an extension of their ongoing effort to water down colonization.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think of pinkwashing and all of the other forms of washing. You have like greenwashing, like environmentally, astroturfing, something like AIPAC, or many other examples we have out there. But pinkwashing specifically, I think about it as
making genocide cute, I would say, or genocidal entities cute. I would say pinkwashing is like giving them a bubblegum feel.
Yeah, I mean, it does that for sure. It definitely, what I was going to say, sorry, steals like the valor of queer movements that have been more radical, more like left, more for the liberation of all, and uses the valor of those past movements to do something insidious, which is give cover to the Zionist project.
Oh yeah, and that like it's not new. It's just a different form of doing it.
Yeah, giving cover, using this like being gay or trans, queer, and that is what I think AIPAC is doing. And I'm not the first person to say it. This isn't like an original thought, but a lot of people have been talking about how it's just kind of interesting how the first person who is trans, openly trans, in Congress in the US also happens to have gotten a lot of her funding to get to that congressional office from AIPAC.
But that's what they do because they are funding everybody. They're funding Republicans, they're funding Democrats. Yeah. However, AIPAC have been funding more than $100 million against progressive candidates that actually are pro-trans rights to win the elections because they happen to be also like pro-Palestine because they're just pro-humanity in general. And it's interesting enough that they choose always like the centrist, like center-right, politicians and other people to promote brand Israel.
Right. Or in this case, I guess they're like
give genocide a wig.
Sure. They're giving like in this case, it's not even center right. It's like, I think people will presume that because Sarah McBride is trans, maybe she has more progressive policy ideas. And in fact, she has professed to being for things like, expanding healthcare access, which by the way, Israel has. They have universal health care for Israelis.
Oh, but not for gender affirming.
Things. Good one. Yeah. Good call. Yeah. But the U.S., of course, we choose to fund Israel's healthcare while not, caring as much for our own, unfortunately. And so by like being a little bit progressive on these other issues, Sarah is sort of cloaking Zionism in the sort of, this liberal sheen, giving it a liberal sheen. How did Sarah McBride become the highest ranking openly transgender elected official in what I would consider to be the world's most violent and fucked up empire, the United States of America?
It's like Israel after 400 years.
What do you think of when you think of Delaware?
Delaware? Nothing really.
Yeah, no, it's true. There's like, I don't know.
I think it's like what? Like maybe the Democratic state. It's like liberal-ish state. You never hear anything like bad about Delaware. It's one of these like ones that Democrats always win with New Hampshire. Or am I wrong?
Generally it has been Democrat. It is where Joe Biden is from.
Oh gosh, this is where he's from?
Genocider in chief.
Wow.
It's also
I thought it's from the Office. Sorry, just kidding. I always confuse him because of the show The Office. It's the same town that he's from.
Oh, really?
It's supposed to be Pennsylvania, but that's why it's confusing.
Yes. Well, he was a senator from Delaware before he became vice president and then president. And he also, it is, like, I think of Wayne's World, the movie Wayne's World. If you've seen it, doesn't have like kind things to say about Delaware. Delaware is just kind of like on the map. It's also like where a lot of banks, I guess, is what I associate it with. Like credit card companies will have an office in Delaware. Like if you look in the fine print.
Yeah.
And I guess it's sort of a tax haven or a bank haven.
Sounds very neoliberal to me.
Totally, yeah. Which makes sense that you have somebody who's like this pro-corporate Democrat like Joe Biden coming from a state that is all about like, you know, I guess
he probably shaped
Chase
it.
Bank. You know,
he probably one of the reasons like he helped shaping it this way too.
For sure. I mean, he was in power for decades before he became president. So
the vampire has been around for 1,000 years.
Yes, absolutely. Very, very in the zombie vein. That's what we know about Delaware. If you have some other Delaware facts we left out, we'd love to hear them. Sarah McBride specifically, she apparently emerged from the womb back in 1990 wanting to get into politics, which is always a little fishy to me because politicians, I think, are paid to sort of lie, paid to be the mediators in U.S. democracy. They're paid to be the mediators, but between like the ruling class, the elites, and the rest of us. And she emerged from the womb in 1990 as somebody who, I guess, identified as wanting to be a politician. So as a kid, she dreamed of running for office so she could help people in her community. When her friends asked for bicycles for Christmas, Sarah asked for a podium. This is from one of the 2 books that is about her life.
I feel like it's one of these fake facts, though. Maybe it's like, why would you get a podium? Maybe is her father like a senator? Does she come from a lot of money? Like, how did she even know the word podium?
Right. Yeah, so a podium. Yeah, I mean, it's like nobody asked for a podium.
Yeah.
Like that is that's.
Also, if you say the word podium while you're a child, you have to go to like private schools or something.
Right. Yeah. It's just the thing that you stand at and give a speech.
Sorry, I was like, I just to call bullshit. It doesn't feel like right for a child, but maybe like my life dream is to be a politician.
Right. Well, her dad was a lawyer, so they could have, you know, maybe they had a podium at home as like a nice mahogany one or something. And she grew up like fairly well off, it seems.
Wow. And
in college, when she got to college, not actually sure if she got the podium or not, she went to American U in nearby DC, where she was involved in the student senates, and she was elected president of the American University Student Government in 2011.
Cool.
Where I guess she had worked on arts advocacy, the purchase of conflict-free minerals on campus, and academic regulations, which seems fine. No mention of AIPAC as of yet. And she did campaign work for Beau Biden, which is, or was Joe Biden's son, who was Attorney General for Delaware, so part of the Biden dynasty. He was the son that died of brain cancer.
Oh, wow.
But before that, you know, he was working for those banks as Attorney General in Delaware.
I didn't know that he was a cop.
Yeah.
Interesting. That makes sense. Adds up.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad for the guy, but, you know.
Yeah. So she was all about his campaign. And before she graduated in 2023, during her last week as a student body president in 2012, she became international news when she came out as trans in her college's student newspaper, The Eagle. And then after coming out, she received a call from Beau Biden, who said...
Who was her boss, basically.
Right.
So she basically had a call from her boss, not because he's like an incredible, whatever, I can't say that.
No, I mean, I'm sure,
Okay.
you know, he is like the top cop of Delaware at this point in time.
Yeah.
And he let her know that she was part of the Biden family, still part of the Biden family, even though she came out.
Oh, wow.
Was the exact quote.
She was like, they accept her as a human being.
Yeah.
What an incredible move. Yeah.
Yeah. And soon after same year actually, as she came out, she was interning at the White House and became the first openly trans person to do it.
Cool.
So a lot of firsts in her life.
That sounds really like actually kind of like sweet in a nice way as a story.
I'm
very scared of what's going on.
I am not above like the representation argument, like the idea that having role models, like as much of an anarchist as I identify as, I still think it is useful. It has been useful to me to have people that I identified as like queer or Asian being in certain, I don't know, jobs or what have you, to show that, oh, this is something within the realm of possibility for me as somebody who is queer and Asian.
I love when they do it though, and it's fantastic. It's a little bit different in corporate, for example, because I feel like in corporate it's just about expanding like the customer base,
right,
by providing these representations.
I think
because they really give a shit, but I guess we'll take it.
I think it's similar to like this kind of role in government is to like, I think obviously even the sort of ogres and orcs over at AIPAC are thinking like, how do like their machinations in their minds is like, how do we keep the Israel dream alive for us? And they thought pinkwashing, they thought promoting somebody into U.S. government, into a high position in U.S. government to continue to serve their interests was the way to go. And so in 2013, after interning at the White House, Sarah joined Equality Delaware, where she focused on hate crimes legislation, meaning more carceral punishment, meaning more prisons.
It sounds really good on paper. Because as a trans woman, like supporting like, a legislation or something against hate crime, it sounds really good on paper.
Right.
But in reality, it means it's a way for cops to get more money.
Yeah.
We're very familiar with this here with Honey Mahogany and a lot of other like local politics.
It's true. It's true. Unfortunately,
it seems like a pattern.
The carceral,
or maybe it has something positive in it.
Trans queer lobby is very strong here, unfortunately.
Yeah, totally.
And apparently in Delaware, that works for the Delaware audience as well.
Yeah.
So Equality Delaware was part of Equality Federation, which I was familiar with because they're this umbrella group of a bunch of different organizations, like Equality California is one. They came out of the Prop 8 campaign in 2008. That was the campaign against gay marriage in California. And so you had a bunch of nonprofits coming out of that fight after that fight for gay marriage was won. And they moved into just supporting like sort of like electoral wins in government and, allegedly supporting pro-gay politicians. However, what is going to be pro-gay is sort of a contested thing. And, maybe they're supporting things that might seem pro-gay for rich gay people, but, they're politicians that would be, spell doom for people who are low income and gay. So I think when we're talking about this huge network of nonprofits that came out of that moment in 2008, you got to sort of like take it with a grain of salt, or a little bit more examination of who these people are supporting. And like with the hate crimes legislation that she was really pushing for, who does this end up serving? Does it end up serving the interests of companies that make a lot of money by, contracting with prisons?
Yeah, and as long as they have like pronouns on prison cells or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so soon after, by 2016, Sarah was on the steering committee of Trans United for Hillary. And in July 2016, she was a speaker at the Democratic National Convention.
That's how I first saw her.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she was the first openly trans person to address a major party convention. I guess that means, Democrat or Republican.
Where they supported basically a power grab that Hillary did against the progressive candidates, Bernie Sanders, who was actually running for trans rights and everybody's rights. At that time, like Bernie had a better, I guess, agenda.
Right.
If you remember the power grabs, she was one of these like basically the centrist sort of trans face.
Yeah, totally.
Now I could see it.
Yeah, so she, again, she's like the first person to do this, the first trans person to do this, which is another thing that you got to question. Like, if you're the first trans person to uphold some of the worst things about the U.S. government, which is the most violent empire in the world in 2024, is this such is this progress, basically?
The woman wanted the podium at like 3 years old.
Seemed like she would do anything to get there, including supporting like candidates that would be probably less supportive of all trans people, like justice for all trans people.
Also, I'm curious, like, who other trans, or openly trans people who ran for office before never made it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we know a bunch, but whatever.
Yeah. Like what deal with the devil did old Sarah make in order to be the first?
She's white.
She is white. Yeah. She looks, she's got like the Hillary kind of outfit going on, like the skirt suit situation. Pantsuit in some cases, but she looks, like out of the Hillary Clinton style book, I suppose.
Yeah.
In 2018, McBride published her memoir, Tomorrow Will Be Different, Love, Loss, and the Fight for Trans Equality, with a foreword by none other than Joe Biden.
Wow. It's funny because his administration, and specifically Kamala Harris, was talking about how she will not stand for federal level support and protection for trans people, and this was like the take that Biden took. And I'm confused. Like, how does she think this is? But I guess at that time, Joe Biden flipped and became supportive of gay marriage, not even trans affirming, right? Like way after that, even the Obama. So, it seems like they had a different relationship, or maybe Biden wasn't as clear about how much he's not going to stand for trans rights.
Throughout a lot of the literature on Sarah, it does get mentioned that she had a hand in sort of pushing Joe Biden on trans issues, pushing him into a more progressive direction.
Oh. So what was the track record for that, for example? What did she push him to do? What did he end up doing?
Exactly. I guess supported her campaigns, wrote her forward in her memoir. I'm not really, not exactly sure. I didn't look too much into what was happening in Delaware.
Joe Biden's token trans woman friend?
Yeah. So the one that he could trot out, and she looks like, Hillary Clinton adjacent. Nice professional lady that can sort of like applaud for him in the background of photos while he's in the
and also to appeal, I guess, to
Congress.
like younger generation, like millennials, liberals, that there's a trans woman on staff that's like a kind of or like in the progress. Like I feel like it's just a way to also expand, regardless of the intention. Like I guess she seems like she earned her place in politics, whether it's bad or not. But
she played the game.
Yeah, but we're not saying like that she didn't deserve to be there. And we're saying just that this is just. Anyways, I'm gonna stop.
Well, I think
I'm reading it so hard.
The entire system is, what we know. If it's a system that upholds genocide, and I think the whole system is rotten. For somebody to get so far and to desire this thing so strongly, I really question.
It's also it's this whole thing about like yes, progressive, yes, liberal, as long as it's not about Palestine or land back.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Anything about land back or Palestine, it's a no. Like now also trans rights and other things, especially with Democrats, because they run out of a platform that they're not going to support trans life.
Right. They're like, it was clear that it was never really, they didn't really care. They were using it sort of as a wedge issue when it was, positive thing politically for them to get behind trans people. They did it. But now we've heard from so many people post-election 2024 that, trans people were why we lost this election. Let's blame trans people.
Oh yeah. And also before that, even like the Young Turks and other like, liberal platforms that's supposed to be the progressive voices were saying like, why are we need to be like too, strong about this trans thing? As if it's like a thing, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm just, again, I'm confused, sister. Like, what are you doing there? But anyways, it's a job. Good for you. Working with the Bidens. That's awesome.
I mean, I
hope he didn't like touch you inappropriately or something, because
that's
he's known to do these things like this.
Oof. Yeah. I know they're all ogres up there. So a little bit before she was in the halls of Congress, she in 2014, a very formative moment for Sarah was when she married her then boyfriend, Andrew Cray, who's an heir to an early tech millionaire, Seymour Cray, who I read in a few places on the internet called him the father of supercomputing. But so, I think I get the sense they're both like pretty rich kids. I don't know how they met, but they were both trans. The very, it's a sad thing that happened to Andrew, who was also in politics. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer in 2014. Soon after the diagnosis, they married, and he died 4 days after their wedding.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, this is definitely a moment that she speaks a lot about, her reasons for supporting access to healthcare, which, I'm on board with.
Yeah. But also, like, I'm curious if really that moment, was, like 2014, that's like that's like over 10 years ago. And I'm curious how she thinks about current, is she still like into the healthcare expansion part? Is she like still doing this, or that's like basically, is she over that now, or is she?
Well, that's the thing is like, we'll talk about that issue of like, is she still advocating when it was like popular to take more progressive points of view? Now that she's in Congress, is she gonna like actually try to put those into, make those a reality? That is still remains to be seen. I did want to quickly mention that for the few years leading up to her becoming a state senator in Delaware, she was the national press secretary for the Human Rights Campaign from 2016 to 2021.
Oh God!
So what do we know?
Yeah,
what do we know about the HRC? What do you know about the HRC?
I know that the HRC doesn't give a shit about trans Black women, because based on my personal experience of trying to get them to support this like whole thing in Minnesota jails. I also know that the HRC, they take a lot of monies from corporations to give them a stamp of approval about being like humane, while like corporations like Tesla, we're talking about Amazon has an HRC badge, like all of these people.
It's a pinkwashing organization, as I see it at this point.
And I know that there's a lot of Zionist funding and very pro-Israeli funding, whether it's corporations or individuals. So HRC is like bad business.
Right. Like some of the like kind of some of the coolest protests that I've seen from afar, some that happened in New York, have been around the HRC since, October 7th, 2023. A lot of queer and trans people going to HRC galas or HRC headquarters and protesting the fact that they have basically taken like the Zionist, line, and
they've always been. They always have been Zionists. Like it never like, it's not like all of a sudden, oh my God, we decided to be Zionists. They're not just Zionists. They're like people who are like sort of a replacement for unions and union rights and like specific rights, because the day they give an organization like the stamp of approval of being HRC, although it's not, like Airbnb, which was building like settlements in Palestine, and they caught an HRC badge and this whole campaign with like you belong and all of this bullshit. I feel like it's really problematic.
Yeah,
it's really problematic because it's sort of normalizes union busting companies. It unionizes, normalizes like transphobic companies and places like this.
Like companies like Northrop Grumman or Raytheon weapons manufacturers, they will give the stamp of approval, like this pinkwashing stamp.
Martin Lockheed has an HRC stamp.
Lockheed, I mean, it's laughable. Like when people talk about like
the police department has one, SFPD. Do you know that?
Yeah, I didn't.
SFPD has an HRC badge.
Like when people talk about like the rainbow bombs that were, it's like quite literally like the HRC that is sort of not literally, but they're sort of metaphorically painting all of these bombs, call the colors of the rainbow, and giving the stamp of approval from the quote unquote gay.
But also the HRC have direct involvement with Israel, like Tel Aviv Pride. A lot of the people that were, I know that from HRC because I worked with them when I used to be in my corporate lives. And there was a trips like to Tel Aviv Pride. A lot of HRC like members would go to, or like can't remember the name of the person who was leading the San Francisco like whatever the department or division. He was like a big deal with like all the Bay Area reported all this like Zionist journalists, but also they have a direct connection with Israel. It's not like just the funding. They used to go visit.
They're actually out there in Israel. Like going on these little trips. So it's very much a pinkwashing operation. She was also brought in sort of as damage control for the HRC because even, aside from the Zionism...
Oh, they're transphobic as hell.
Yeah, I mean, 2008, what I knew like largely about the HRC was their symbol, which is like the equal sign, the like yellow and blue equal sign. And that used to be like a common bumper sticker back in the day. But also the other big thing that I knew about them was that when there was like legislation going around to stop discrimination, like they cut trans people out of this legislation back in the 2000s to make it more, supposedly palatable to people in DC. And so by doing that, they said, okay, the HRC is an organization that will sell out trans people in a second.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is like the context in which she was working. Like she was working at these nonprofits that are really about, I mean, they will sell out whoever it is, even if that is like from within their community, in order to gain power, I suppose. So she came in as sort of like a cleanup crew. Like they hired her to very much like, you know, be this face, like a trans face in PR for the HRC.
And it's like, yes, she's a trans woman. She's an extremely privileged trans woman who grew up in like, you know, like the podium was the first thing she saw as a child.
Right.
And also, I mean, I'm not like undermining her trans experience, but I'm saying that she's an extremely privileged white trans woman.
Right. Which sort of, it makes a lot of sense for an organization like the HRC.
Yeah.
And
it's like a face that's okay. Like, you know what I mean? They're not going to bring like, you know, like a black trans person to like be the face of it. They're going to bring the person who would make sure that the liberal agenda is okay. How did she even take that position? That's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like you are going into it and you are sort of, I mean, in the same way that you go into US Congress knowing that if you are sort of a progressive figure or, you know, like you're sort of on the left at all, you are sort of being used to paint the system as fair to people who want to see more progress.
Or she's maybe also really good with fundraising because she has access to a lot of capital.
That's progress, whatever that means. Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I mean, she comes from the state with all the banks. Yeah. So another thing that makes sense. And so in addition to getting funding from places like the HRC and Equality Delaware, at which she worked, in this most recent campaign that got her into Congress, her top one of her top funders was AIPAC.
Oh gosh.
As you can imagine.
That was just a slap.
Like that's where we unfortunately, like us and a lot of other people who are out there have had the same critique, which is like, even if you are, say that you're for, you know, expanding healthcare, it's like, you can't, it's hard to say that when Israel is bombing hospitals in Gaza with money from the US, that you will consent to funding.
And also, like, Israelis raping trans and queer people, like killing and raping Palestinians, whether they're queer or like their entire family members. But also, it really adds up because based on her politics, like, yes, her gender, and I love that Democrats love to play identity politics, which is really stupid and overdone. But it adds up. Like, if she took an AIPAC like funding, but she was like somebody who was like, you know what I mean, like a true progressive or somebody who really was doing the work, like grassroots work. But given her history, that's like her crowning is like AIPAC funding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially that they could use her in a way to actually undermine other progressive candidates, which what they did with Kamala Harris, you know?
Right. Yeah. And they did with, like ousting Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush. Basically, the 2024 congressional elections were all about how AIPAC was using money to implant like these less progressive candidates in areas, like in some cases, you know, like running Democrats against Democrats that were already there, just because they wouldn't drop everything for Israel. So, I mean, she also, in addition to being this pinkwashing figure, where we know she has already, you know, been supporting the weapons that the U.S. is sending to Israel, and on October 7th of 2024, a year after, you know,
the day it all started.
The day it all started. She reaffirmed her devotion to Israel.
Wow.
Same BS that you heard from people like Kamala Harris. Calling it a very complex situation that we need to support.
Oh no, she didn't.
Yeah, I mean that is a word.
Why can't you just take the money and shut up? But that's not the job.
Yeah.
You take the money to speak.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, just the same line that we've heard from so many of these like similar Democratic Party ghouls.
I mean, okay, so I guess that she's another she's like she seems like she grew up in AIPAC, like based on like I don't know, if you go a little bit back, I don't think it's like a new relationship that all of a sudden AIPAC fell on her ground. She's been around AIPAC people all the time, but I'm curious, is she like okay on trans rights then? Is she actually doing the work?
This is a good question, because the first chance, I mean, obviously she's only been a senator. She's only been in Congress for a minute. Prior to that, she was a state senator. But the first chance that she had to show the world that she would fight for marginalized people, including people from her own trans community, she flopped.
Oh no.
Yes.
No.
So I don't know if you heard about this, but like Congress passed this ridiculous law around the bathrooms on Capitol Hill, led by Republican congresspeople, including Nancy Mace, who called Sarah a biological man, and Mike Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House for the Republicans. And, this is one of the first things that happened after Sarah was in office. And so, people were expecting her to speak up on behalf of trans people. And, she did release a statement. But in the statement, she just kind of, she says, I'm not here to fight about bathrooms. I'm here to fight for Delawareans and to bring down costs facing families. Like all members, I will follow the rules as outlined by Speaker Johnson, even if I disagree with them.
Oh no!
So
she even say like, "This is not cool." That's horrible.
Right. So she just hedged, and she said she would follow all of the rules. Which, in the case that rules are,
she would
wrong,
go to like a man's bathroom. She would go to a male bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like
instead
ostensibly
of like standing up and protesting.
It's like one of these symbolic things that the Republicans are trying to show, like, this is how bad we hate trans people. We hate them more than the Democrats in power right now. And this is how we're going to show it, is by passing this dumbass law. All of the Congress people have like bathrooms within their own offices that they could potentially use. But the idea would be that she would not be allowed to use a women's bathroom.
That's actually really like terrifying, because if I was I'm trans, sorry, but if I was a trans politician, if somebody told me, I would never do this. I promise, Toshio, if I ever do that.
Yes, please do not. Yeah, we will not be friends.
No, we won't. It seems like it seems very, very.
That's nice. Yeah.
Or at least I'm like gonna say a statement of like, oh, I support trans rights. So you can do that like in any different ways.
It was very weak. It was kind of like, and you did have people showing up, activists from outside, like people that I know and respect a lot. Like Raquel Willis is one person that went to Congress shortly after this happened and staged a protest. I just think that if you have gotten all the way up to like become a congressperson, don't you want to use that power to do good things for the community that has supported you all the way up to get to where you are?
Or at least that's like, it's like like your own dignity.
It reads to me as self-loathing when people aren't willing to stand up for their own bodies, basically, when they are in such a place of power. I know that she was trying to do this like sort of, I'm like a prim and proper Hillary Clinton, and I'm just going to ignore these bullies over here that are, passing what is like a ridiculous law.
But obviously she's not like, she's okay with it. Like,
Yeah.
What I mean by that is like this statement is a reflection of how much she could, like what's for her is important.
Right.
And I guess like her political career and progress, she doesn't give a shit about like trans people being assaulted. And because if you're doing this on the Capitol, you don't give a shit about kids in school getting like problems with the bathrooms.
Right.
I don't care about bathrooms as if it's like, oh, I'm like way above this like naive thing. I was like, no, but you're a spokesperson for the people, and you're an example of other people that are trans, that are more vulnerable, that you're not taking, not advantage, sorry. This is the least amount of responsibility towards your own community to do that.
I have to agree. It's like, what is the point in pursuing this kind of power if not to use it to support people who are marginalized? And, you know, people who defended her statement, including people who are trans, were like, you know, this is so classy. The Wall Street Journal actually was like, what a classy move by our nation's first trans congressperson. Yeah. But for me, that classy move just translates as kind of a sad, again, like a sort of indication that you're going to sell out your own community.
It's also partially racist, because the idea that somebody like, okay, now like someone else like, you know, who lead the fights for trans liberation is usually Black trans women. Mm-hmm. And the idea of like people, you know, protesting and stuff like that versus like, you know, this like, you know, this sweet little white lady who's like now on our side.
Right.
When they say like the classiness of it, calling it classy to like not to defend your rights and not making a mess out of it, for me feels a little bit classist actually.
Right. Yeah.
Racist.
Yeah. Like, it absolutely.
It's like you're one of the good ones.
Right. Like, yeah, totally. Like we accept you because you are all of the things. You're white, you come from like privilege, you're, you know, a widow to somebody who was a millionaire. Yeah. So of course, like, you know, you are all of the things that we know and love, but you happen to be trans. Yeah. And that's, I guess we can accept that in 2024, 2025, but certainly, yeah, you're right. Like people who are intersectionally marginalized don't even bother.
It's not classy for them to protest, you know what I mean? Or like do something.
Yeah. So that is a bit about Sarah.
Oh my God. Oh, Sarah.
I know, it's a bummer because it's like,
I mean, I don't really like know a lot about her, but you know, I know her by passing because she was like this like very passionate like trans person. But also we don't have a lot of like out trans people, because I'm sure there might be a lot of trans people who are in the closet who are like in different political like places, but I feel like that's one of the few out ones. Yeah. And it's very damaging. I feel like it. Because the way they are using, it's damaging not because she's there, it's damaging because she being there and being assimilated or being an advocate for policies that marginalize her own community, and doesn't really care about Palestinians or anyone else. Mm-hmm. It is really scary because it kind of neutralizes the voice, because it becomes this example of like, oh, and that trans woman who like doesn't give a shit about bathrooms. Why are you so upset? Why are you upset that your kid is being bullied in the bathroom?
Right, that's true. Yeah.
Next Benedict was killed because of a bathroom incident. That's like a two-spirited child who was killed. And a lot of trans kids are bullied, and then a lot of like they killed themselves because of the bullying, or they already are brutalized to death. And then that fucking, like, you know, podium loving child now is talking about how she doesn't care about the bathroom.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's just, it's a very easy way just to get, honestly, everything about her.
Ooh, yeah, you could have been on board before, but it's hard to at this point. Yeah. So that is a little bit about Sarah. Sorry to
so is
deflate
she like an
your
AIPAC
balloon.
Zombie for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that anyone who accepts money from I mean, directly from AIPAC, like that is consent for what Israel is doing and the U.S. is funding in Palestine.
And also, for me, she's an AIPAC zombie because it is a clear indication that she would be advocating for AIPAC policies that are extremely conservative, and the best of them is a centrist one that actually does go against progressive values and radical change that we need in this country, including change that trans people need. So given that she's an AIPAC spokesperson right now, an AIPAC zombie, it means she's going to be a spokesperson for like pro-Israeli needs for additional colonization of Palestine and genocide, but also a spokesperson against her own people. And she's not the first in history.
Yeah, no, she's going to put the Israeli lives before people in her own trans community back here.
Sorry, like settler colonials' life.
Yeah. So definite AIPAC zombie. If you want to learn about more people like Sarah, more villains out there who are just stumping for Israel and are all about
I don't care about bathrooms,
war and bombs, and not issues that are actually about survival of people like Next Benedict, you can go to that's a horrible transition. But so yeah, if you go to our social media, we're on IG, we are on TikTok, we are on Blue Sky. Check us out, and we'll be back with more episodes soon.